ReefDudes is sponsored by Ecotech Marine and Bulk Reef Supply.
Today we're talking about how to maintain a reef tank. What's going on, guys? Devin from ReefDudes. Now, new reefers are often intimidated by starting a reef tank. How much work is it going to be? What goes into it? So today we're going to look at that with a couple different size tanks. So I have a Nano. I have a fairly new kind of mid-sized tank that's around, the 100-gallon mark, and this one's, 180, 200 gallons. So let's start with the Nano and go through kind of the daily, weekly maintenance. Now, one of the easiest tanks to maintain is a Nano reef. So this little guy is a 14-gallon Hella reef tank that lives on my desk. For maintenance, I feed the tank daily. Sometimes I use pellets, but most times I use frozen mysis. That's kind of the daily task. Now, I also have an auto top-off on this tank, and what that does is it replaces the evaporation with fresh water. The auto top-off does this for me. There's a little float sensor in the back, and as water evaporates, it detects the drop, and it just adds more water to the tank. And if you did not have an auto top off, you would just have to use some fresh water and add it to the tank to maintain a consistent level. Now, because salt doesn't evaporate, your salinity will rise if you don't do this. That's why it's important to auto top off your water to maintain salinity, either manually or with an auto top off. And thankfully, the use of an auto top off saves me having to do this manually. So my daily task is really just feeding the fish in this tank. Then every couple days I will clean the glass, and then every couple weeks I'll do a water change. Now in this tank it's 14 gallons, and this one I do a 1 bucket water change. So basically what that means is I'll use a 5-gallon bucket, and I'll mix up a fresh one full of salt water, and then I'll have a second empty one. I kind of do it this way, that way I know exactly how much I'm putting back in, so I can drain the same amount of the new salt water that I made. It makes it just really easy to figure out the levels for doing a water change. If you also have coral inside of your tank like I do, you will have to do some form of dosing. Now you can do this by hand, or you can do it automated with a doser. In this case, I have an Ecotech Versa, which is a single doser on the back of the tank. And I have this DIY dosing container I made ages ago, and it is dosing all for reef. So it's just an all-in-one product that gets dosed a couple mils per day to the tank, and it's enough to keep the corals and everything inside happy. So that, coupled with a water change every few weeks, works very well. Now, the beautiful thing with a Nano is water changes are so simple. It is extremely quick to just do a 1 bucket water change. And if I change 5 gallons of water out of 14 gallons, I'm basically changing a third of it. So if I do that every week or two, you're essentially changing half to 3/4 or even a full, 100% of the water every month, which keeps the tank very, very happy. So next up on the list for a little more complexity would be my Nios reef tank. Now this one is roughly 100 gallons, so in contrast, went from 14 gallons up to about 100 gallons. And this one's very similar. I feed the tank daily with a bit of an addition. So this one I do feed nori as well, because I have tangs in the tank. So I have a yellow tang and a white-tailed bristletooth tang. So these guys are big algae eaters. So I do feed the tank nori daily via a little algae clip. And I also do feed mysis at night. And on top of that, these guys also have an auto feeder in the back, the Avast Plank, super cool feeder, and that feeds freeze-dried food to the fishies. So they get a few more snacks throughout the day in this tank. Now on top of that, same thing. Every few weeks, I'll do a water change on this tank. Now, this one I do bit water changes. So the Nano I did 5 gallons. This one I'll do a brute container, which is around 30 gallons in my case. And same thing, when I do a water change on this one, I'll use 2 of them. So I'll use one full of fresh salt water, and then I'll use another one that's empty. And I didn't know exactly how much to drain and replace, what makes it really easy. Now in the Nano, we didn't have a skimmer or any other equipment to maintain. So this one, we have a little more steps on this one. So inside the tank, we have power heads. In my case, these are MP40s, and I have 4 of them on the back wall. So every couple months, I will take them out and I'll clean the wet side impellers. To do that, I usually soak in citric acid for an hour or two. I'll give it a scrub and then pop it back inside the tank. Now that's kind of the quick, easy way. If you've been in this hobby for a while, one kind of pro tip is if you get extra wet sides, you can just swap them so your tank's only without flow for, less than a minute. And then you can just swap out with your next set of clean ones, and it's really easy to do. Then similar to the other tank, I have a dosing pump on this one. And I'm also doing the exact same thing. So this tank, I'm just using Alpha Reef. So it just gets dosed to the tank. Now this tank has a few extra steps. If we look in here, I do have filter socks. So every week or so, I will take out the filter socks and clean them. I just use the mesh socks. So if you use the felt ones, they do clog up a lot quicker. But this one, the mesh ones, if the tank's running fairly clean, every week or so, I'll just give them a quick rinse and put them back inside. Now, in addition to this one, we also have what's called a protein skimmer. Now, this is essentially a giant foam fractionator, and it makes bubbles. And inside the bubbles, it attaches protein, and the proteins make all the way up to the top of the cup, and they pop inside. So every week or two, I will clean this out. And you can see all that dark, lovely, gucky stuff building up inside. That's what gets cleaned out, and it eventually exports all the fish poop and all the organics from the tank. Next up, we have my water box, and this one is kind of the next stream. So we have a small Nano with a bunch of coral in it. We have a newer 100-gallon-ish tank with just a bit of coral. And now we have this one, which is a mature tank just packed full of coral. So this will be the other end of the spectrum. So this one is slightly more maintenance, but still pretty similar to the Nias. Now I've actually decided to do a big water change on this one, which happens part of this video. So there is two different ways you can do this. You can do an automatic water change, which will use a dosing pump and take water out for you and replace it. And you don't really have to do this, but I still like to do a manual big one periodically, just as an excuse to vacuum the sand and clean all of it up. So I use 2 brew containers. I use one for fresh salt water, a heater inside, and a pump for a power head, and I'll dump salt in and get it up to 35 ppt salinity. And I'll take my second one, I'll use a water change hose, I'll suck the water out into an empty brute, and I'll use a pump to pump the clean salt water, fresh salt water back into the tank. So that's something I'll do every few months. Otherwise, I'll just use a little daily kind of gallon a day ones to keep things going otherwise. You know, looking at this tank though, you can see I'm far overdue to clean some of these power heads. There's a lot of built up stuff. So, you know, every couple months, I'll take that out, I'll give it the citric acid bath and sparkle it up. Same with my MP60s, these aren't too bad, but there's definitely a bit of algae building up on it, which will reduce flow over time. That's every couple months. You know, the tank gets fed daily, frozen mysis at night, and usually give them nori sometime throughout the day. And similar to the Nias, we have a protein skimmer, or foam fractionator is another name for it. And on this guy, same thing, you know, it's about a third full. I'm doing a water change, I'll probably empty out and clean today. But basically, this gets dumped down the toilet, and any gunk inside I'll scrub off just in the bathroom sink, use a little scrub brush and just clean it up until it's nice, clear, pristine acrylic and put it back in business. Now, the cleaner it is, the better it's gonna work. Another kind of step every month or two, depending, if you have a refugium. So this guy is a refugium with chaetomorph algae. It's growing out of the water, which means I am far overdue to empty this and tone it way back. But this is normally something that would happen every few weeks or month. You know, the protein skimmer, same thing every couple weeks. This guy, every few months, I will change the filter roller. So you do not need a filter roller, you do not need filter socks, but they do help polish your water. So the Nano, I don't use them at all. The Nias tank, I just have some mesh socks, and on the water box, I use the filter roller. So this will last me a couple months before I have to change it. This is not really a normal thing, more of an advanced thing, but this is filled with soda lime pellets. This just helps boost my pH, and it's color changing resin. So if you look inside, you can see some of it starting to turn purple. So I know some of this media is getting exhausted. Now, because of how much coral life I have in this tank, I have to do a little bit of extra work to supplement and keep things happy. And in this case, I use what's called a calcium reactor to maintain a lot of the trace element or the elements for the corals. Now this one, the nice thing about a calcium reactor is you really only have to maintain it probably once a year. So this is full of little rocks that get dissolved, and it doses calcium, alk, and mag to the tank. And on top of that, I do have some off-reef on the doser, and I do have some hydroxides to boost my alkalinity and pH a little bit more. So periodically, you know, every month or two, I'll check these and top them off if required. So it is really not that hard to maintain a reef tank. You know, give it a little bit of love and it will love you back. If your life is crazy, hectic, you know, go with something like a Nano. A little tank is beautiful, super easy to maintain. I can do a water change in like 2 minutes. Very, very low time investment to get some beautiful things out of it. You know, the bigger you go, obviously it takes a little more time, it takes a little more effort to do all that stuff, but it's also a very rewarding thing. So there you go, guys. Do not be scared of it. It is an amazing hobby. It is not that hard at all to do. And hopefully that answers a bunch of your questions. If there's anything else you want to know about, you know, starting a reef tank or how to maintain it, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this, hit that like button if you're new. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.